I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, and possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. This is me, James Tyson, and today I'm dragging you kicking and screaming across my country of Canada to Montreal, Quebec, where my friend Ann Lothian is now living. She is she's everything. She's a psychic medium. She's intuitive. She glows in the dark, darn near. She's an astrologer, and astrology is what we're going to be talking to her about today. Well, we will touch a little bit on growing up in Ontario in a haunted house, basically in a gold mine area, so with ground full of quartz and a river running underneath her home, and she and her sisters seeing all sorts of things as they grow up. So we're going to talk a little bit about ghosts, and then we're going to get into her being moving from mediumship to astrology, which is what she's doing full time now. Really, really interesting woman, and I think she's even done Donald Trump's chart and his son, and has something very, very interesting to say about Don Jr. and something that may or may not happen coming up. So it's kind of very cool, and I'm very much looking forward to what she has to say about that. You can follow along at home at her website, lunaticastrology.com. Now, when you Google net that one, don't stick on the Tumblr or the whatever version. There's another one out there. It looks like an anime website. Hers is lunaticastrology, all one word, .com. And if you want to narrow it down, just type in the word Lori behind it, Lori. And her other website is right here on the tip of my tongue. Don't look. It is the Awakened Dreamer. Awakened Dreamer has a lot of her writings on there, and also links to what she does on YouTube. And one of the things that it's on there in regards to a writing that she's done just not too long ago, actually, in the last week or so, it's about the Neptune effect. So I'm going to talk to her about the Neptune effect and what that is and how that's affecting us on this planet. And we're also going to talk about reality shift and her life shifts as they come. So I'm going to bring her on now. You're going to love her. Again, go to our website, lunaticastrology.com, and also Awakened Dreamer, theawakeneddreamer.com. Lorianne, how have you been?
Hey, James. Great. How are you these days?
I am doing well. Came back from McMinnville, Oregon at the UFO conference last weekend, and had a lot of fun. Got to talk to very interesting people like Bob Lazar, who worked reverse engineering UFOs that were found in an archaeological dig about 10,000 years ago, and talked to Ron Moorhead, the fellow that recorded a number of Bigfoot sounds out in the Sierra Mountains in California years ago, and hadn't talked to him for a long time. Met a bunch of really cool people. And yes, Ron was there, even though it was a UFO thing, but he had a booth, so I wanted to talk to him.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I love that crew. The Lazar documentary that came out was quite convincing.
Was that Area 51, Bob Lazar, Area 51, or?
Yeah, that most recent one.
Yeah, that was. That's my buddy Jeremy was the one who made it. So he was there, yeah. And George Knapp, and it was a kind of a cool group that were there. And Bob's kind of fun because he doesn't like being there. He would rather just be home or in his lab. But because it was kind of debuting a bit of his movie or his documentary, he agreed to come along and answer some questions. And, he's a very, very cool guy. Very bright, very, very bright man. almost as bright as you.
Yes, let's talk about me.
Okay.
Let's talk all about me.
I love talking about you.
All right. Sounds great.
So, Ann Lothian, you have moved away from me. You live in Quebec, in Montreal, Quebec, and I've been following you around. Oh, that sounds creepy. I've been dipping in every so often to the Awakened Dreamer, awakeneddreamer.com, where you have a number of your writings and kind of little blogettes that pop out there. And you also have that lunaticastrology.com website. When did this whole woo-woo side of you kind of come to the surface? When did you know you were quite a lot sensitive to things around you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was just listening to another podcast recently where the main question he starts off with is, tell me how weird you were as a child, because he interviews people like me. And that question about when you get woo or when you get, sort of alternate reality oriented, for most people who are adults living that life, it's as a child that something occurs or a series of events occur that are like, glitches in the matrix. And so for me, it was ghosts. So I grew up in a kind of spooky house because not that the house was spooky. I mean, it was a beautiful house, Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, built in about, I think, 1919 in a mining town, or maybe it was 1928, but it was somewhere around there. But it was actually later on, years later, I found out there was an underground river that ran underneath it and had been covered over. So there is some lore about when you're on top of an underground stream or river or close to it, it's kind of vortexy. And I only heard that years later, that I was always living on top of a stream and that was possibly what was going on with that house. But it wasn't just me, my sisters as well. I have two sisters who grew up in that house. And so we had visual sightings in the night of ghosts. And I think I have to tell you that made me uber oriented toward the non-ordinary, because you see things in your house that you shouldn't be seeing, or hear things you shouldn't be hearing. But I think the funniest one that we ever had as kids that scared the bejesus out of my sisters and me was that we were sleeping in the same bedroom. We had like three little beds in one bedroom. That was kind of cute, actually, that we did that. We were very close. And one night, my sisters and I one of us woke up, I guess maybe at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, and heard footsteps in the room, and woke up the other sister. Hey, do you hear that? And what the two awake sisters were hearing, which is me and my middle sister Nancy, was we were hearing shuffling sounds on carpet, and it was a very plushly carpeted bedroom, but it was like shush, 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 like someone was dragging their feet slowly across the carpet, coming closer to the bed, to 3 beds. And so I remember the sister and I who were awake screamed. We both realized we could hear the same thing. It was not just our imagination, and ran to my mother's bedroom and left the other sister behind. And then the other sister woke up and she came running. What's going on? So then we have 3 of us clambering into my mother's bed in the middle of the night. She only has a double bed, for goodness sake. She says, what's wrong? And now it's not the first time weird stuff has happened in our house, but this is probably the most dramatic, because we were all experiencing it together. And we screamed, there's somebody walking in the room, there's some footsteps in our bedroom. And then my mother said, oh, girls, you're all just having a bad nightmare or something. And she got us all kind of like tucked into bed with her, because we were too afraid to go back. And because she turned her light on to tuck us in with her. And then she turned the light out. And as soon as she turned her bedroom light out, there was the most gigantic bang. Like, it wasn't even like the kind of bang you'd have if you knocked on a wall. It was as if like 300 pounds slammed into the wall behind my mom's bed. And that was the wall to the bedroom that we had left.
Oh.
So whatever had slipped into the bedroom with these weird footsteps, then literally poltergeist slammed the whole wall. It literally was intense. And my mother turned the light on and said, we're sleeping with the light on tonight, girls.
Yeah. Because evil, giant, monstrous things can't survive in light. So.
Oh, exactly. Especially nothing like a good, lampstand beside the bed to ward off 300-pound invisible things.
That shuffle. You could probably outrun them if it's shuffling. Yeah.
It was shuffling. It was pretty slow. It must have been I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what creature from the other side it was. But that's what I mean. It wasn't just ghosts. Sometimes they were literally people who, might look from another era, like wearing clothes of another time. Sometimes it was things like that where there was no obvious thing, or things like going downstairs and all the faucets were running or all the cupboards were open.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of that kind of activity. So I think for me and my sisters, we're all very intuitive and psychic and oriented toward the healing arts, and it was just kind of a normal environment to consider that reality wasn't just what you think it is.
It's interesting that you talk about the creek or the river under the house, because that's very common. It's a source of constant energy that things can draw upon to be more visible. And we find that in anywhere where you're close to the river, you live close to the river, you may see things. Even tidal movements will make it easier to see the things that are always there. Tombstone, Arizona, with all the quartz and solar in the ground and that solar loading of the sun, it's easy for things to draw from that energy. And if you are your whole family's sensitive. Plus, it's a mining town, so there's probably a different geology in the ground and a river. You just had this great little vortex showing up.
Absolutely, and it is a mining town, gold mining, but there's a lot of quartz it's a Precambrian shilled granite, right? And there's a lot of quartz, so it's a very crystallized quartz-like rocky terrain. And I was living on top of an underground stream.
Yeah. So you could. What a great place to go see a ghost, because they would just be so easy to see.
Yeah, my sister could charge for her house. She could just open it up ticket, dare you to sleep in this room. And in fact, for years when I would go home and visit the room where the event happened, how many friends of mine from university or just my ex-husband and stuff would come to visit and have some event occur at 3 a.m. or so in that room. Complete, skeptics, neophytes to the non-ordinary, with reports of what happened the next day.
Is it the spare room now? Like the guest room?
No, my sister actually sleeps in it. She's crazy.
Oh, okay. It's because a lot of times in a haunted house, the haunted bedroom ends up being the guest room. Because nobody who lives there wants to sleep in it. But hey, if Grandpa's coming, well, put him in that room.
That's funny. Yes, I can see how that would be the case, but you kind of become inured to it, and you learn how to kind of shut yourself off. I think that's what my sister does, and I think I'm quite good at that now too. It doesn't matter how much activity is going on. It depends on also how receptive you choose to be. Yeah,
it's very cool. I would really not want to stay there, but because I'm kind of a coward in that way. Basically, I do ghosts if they bother you. Between that 3 and 4:30 in the morning thing, they kind of pop up and say, "Hi, I just came through because the veil's a bit thin and I want to get your attention." I'd rather you didn't. Why don't you just wait outside and we'll talk in the morning? But, well,
the thing about ghosts, right, is that ghosts themselves, I don't think many people are scared by them. I think they're scared by the idea of something unknown. But when you actually see with your eyes a ghost or encounter a presence, for the most part, because they are benign, most of them are benign, curious about you, or whatever you want to say is really happening. It's not actually a scary event. Now, what I described was scary, right?
Yeah.
But normally, no, they're not. So, because I've had some scary events, but they weren't dead people.
Just more of an elemental energy or being?
Scary events have been things that, like what I described to you, I would say that they're just, just not of this world, really.
Yeah. And so you've been open, well, obviously since you were a kid, to the woo-woo things, and you've kind of developed your own divination into astrology. When did that first start popping through?
So, because of this beginning in my life, I was always checking things out, right? So I was early adopter of, palmistry and, sun sign astrology in the 70s, because I was born in 62, so I'm outing myself here, 57 now.
Wow.
And so I really kept abreast of the latest crazy, new just pop fad because I found it interesting. So what happened is I lived in New York City in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was magazine editor there. And I had the most poltergeisty freaking place. I don't want to get away from how I got into astrology, but you're going to like this one. I know you'll appreciate this. I lived in a place that was made of landfill on the Hudson River. It's called Battery Park City. And so basically it wasn't land that you could say was haunted. It was literally created by building out into the river. But where it was located, James, was literally in the bullseye of 9/11. My apartment building was, covered in dust right after. The buildings, my buildings around my building were closed. I used to just walk outside my door and look up behind my building, and the trade towers were looming over my building. So what I experienced when I lived in that unit for 2 years before I moved to another apartment in New York City, and for those people who listen who are savvy about Manhattan, that's Rector Place down in Battery Park City, so close to where the trade towers were. My backyard was the trade towers. I really think that there was something going on when I was there and it was a brand new construction. There was no prior tenants. I was the first one to live in it. So it wasn't like there was residue from another person or the land it was on. I think that the poltergeist activity in that apartment was coming out of a future disturbance. That was a ground zero for so many deaths.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, and it didn't make sense to me at the time that it was so intense. And I wasn't a teenager. I wasn't, typical, piezoelectric nightmare full of poltergeists around me. I was in my 20s. And so, and only years later when 9/11 happened did I really reflect on what might have been causing the disturbances around me.
Do you have those disturbances around you still?
No, I don't. But the last time I did, it was because somebody had come into my house who was carrying a troop of entities with him. And after he left for about a month and a half, things were just flying off the walls. So this is going to sound way out there, but not to your crowd. Mm-hmm. So I hired basically a house exorcist, and she did the removal for me. And she's an amazing woman in Vancouver, where you are. You should have her on your show, right? Diane Barbarash.
Oh, yeah.
And she's incredible. She is such a gifted exorcist for people stuff. And anyway, it stopped. It just stopped as soon as she did the clearing for me. But it was literally 4 or 5 weeks. And one of my biggest paintings, and I'm not kidding you, it's like gorgeous. It was framed. It was expensive. It didn't just fall off the wall. I mean, it flew like 4 feet from the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, and that went on and on after he left. He left a bit of his crew with that he came in with him. And, I learned a lot about energies on that one because I didn't see it in my intuition, but then only after he left and I looked back at what had happened, I saw, oh my God, he considers himself a kind of a psychic shaman type guy. So he does that kind of work, right? Mm-hmm. So I think he carried a little residue on his being. So anyway, So what was the question?
What's the capital of Ecuador? Oh, sorry, that was the other one.
Wait. Keto.
Yes, you were right. Woo! You have won a something. That weird following of entities that kind of scrape off, or especially feel that they're kind of in its place because you have great energy in your place. I was talking to Barry Taff. He was doctor of parapsychology and ran the parapsychology unit at UCLA from the 68 or 69 into the 70s. And in his study, he describes people who experience poltergeist activity as poltergeist agents. It's usually the person themselves that create or attract all this stuff into their space that becomes the energetic bouncing off the walls. That's why I was asking if you actually had this the constant poltergeist activity, or it's been constant in your life.
No, episodic. I think that times of high stress or high emotional content, just after my mother died. But when this guy came in, I wasn't in that kind of time frame. So that was literally just something he left behind. But no, like when my mother died, she was hit by a car when I was 39, and it was very traumatic, shock, loss, grief. And in the aftermath of that, I had classic poltergeists for like 3 months. I had like the 3 knocks,
Yeah.
And I had on the wall all the time behind my office, which was nothing back there but a crawl space. I had, those little electric cars. My son had a couple of them. You have your little remote control. He was about 6 or 7 or 4 or 5 or whatever he was. No, he was 10. But anyway, he had those remote control cars around my house. And suddenly, just after my mom died, they started moving all the time by themselves. And they would follow me around like pets. I would be making my eggs and breakfast, and then one of the cars would come sit by my feet, and then I would carry it off to my office, and it would follow me to the office. And nobody was handling the remote controls. I turned them off. I took the batteries out of the remote controls, but I didn't take the batteries out of the cars. So what I thought interesting about that time, it was probably about 3 months of poltergeist activity, was it didn't bother me. Like, I kind of thought it was really cool. I felt like life had lost all of its color. It was monochromatic. I was grief-stricken, and this gave me some kind of a delight. Actually, I found it very delightful.
Oh, that's kind of nice then.
Yes, it was really nice. Actually, it was like remembering how magical life could be.
Yeah, and especially when they're following you around, it's like a gift. Here, you don't have a cat actually here right now, so we're going to do this, and
it was really cool. It was really cool, and you know what? I knew it wasn't my mom. I mean, my mom had better things to do on the other side of the veil than move remote cars around my apartment, my house, or whatever.
Did you happen to ask your sisters if they had anything like that going on about the same time? Or do you recall?
That's a really good question. I do know that we all had dreams with my mom at the same time. Like, she would come to one of us in a dream, and all 3 of us would call each other the next day and said, "Oh my God, Mom visited me last night." And visitation dreams are so different than regular dreams. There's usually a hug, there's a lot of love expressed, there's just a few words said. It's never the typical dreamscape. So we had those overlapping dreams, but I don't think they had the poltergeist activity, and I think that's because I'm kind of an agent for it. But you know what? Let me rethink that. No, I think my sister Nancy the one who lives in my mom's house now, the haunted house, had a lot of like faucets turning on and cupboard doors staying open or opening up in the night, and you come down to like odd phenomena like running water and open cupboards. I think she did. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And there's something about it too, yeah. Like we all grew up in that house. We were all marinated in the non-ordinary as children, and so I think we all have very highly receptive energy fields, and non-ordinary perception is quite refined for all of us. So, like, literally, my youngest sister does tarot card readings. My middle sister's like a healer, So, yeah, we're all ready and primed for this. But I will tell you a little sweet story, and we'll go back to how I started astrology. I was waiting for a sign from my mom that was unequivocal that she was okay on the other side, and the dreams weren't enough. And then literally within a few months, maybe 2 months, 3 months of her death, I applied for a new credit card. And when I got my credit card PIN number in the mail, that's how they used to send it to you. I don't know if they still do, but this little number that you would unwrap in this strange piece of paper. This is your PIN number for your new credit card. It would always arrive after or before the credit card. The 4 digits of my PIN number for that credit card, randomly assigned by the universe, were the last 4 digits of my mom's phone number. And it was very bittersweet because that was a number that I grew up with as a child. That was the number that I called her on all the time. It was, and after she died, my sister left her voicemail up for a while so we could hear her voice. It was this kind of this feeling that, for her phone number to be my PIN number was her way of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, all is well.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. We're talking to Ann Lothian. She is everything. She is a sensitive, obviously. She's had her ghostly experiences and is a astrologer. You're gosh darn it, you're a medium. You've done oracle card readings and things like that too.
Yeah, so I did spend 10 years as a clairvoyant, and I used to be an active medium working with dead people when they came through. And then I stopped doing that. I did that for about 8 years in my 30s, and I had some little mini fame over that in the United States. So I used to live in the New York and then Washington, D.C. area. But, it's interesting that you asked how I became astrologer, because it really was the oddest thing. Because I had been editing and freelance writing in Manhattan while I was a magazine editor as well at a job. I had got a freelance gig through a girlfriend of mine, and it was to ghostwrite astrology books for this dead astrologer. And it was kind of funny because I didn't know anything more than a very cursory understanding of astrology at that point. And so I was immersed with, we had to ghostwrite them because he had died suddenly before completing the next year's series. And you know what they were? They were those series of books he used to stand in the checkout stand at the supermarket back in the 80s and 90s. And this was a famous guy. Berkeley Press was publishing him, paperbacks for the year ahead. Leo, 1990, Sagittarius, 1990. And so it was really, really silly, very basic sun sign astrology, but I had to know enough to write the books. Like, what was your Aries month like? What would the year be like? So I dived into astrology to research it for a freelance writing job. And I think I wrote like Sagittarius, Virgo, and Leo, 1990. And then because I had gotten myself into the investigation of astrology for the work, I became smitten with it. And I was casting charts by hand before software existed, doing the calculations, the long math calculations to create a natal chart for somebody. And so I began doing it as a passionate hobby. So that was that was 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the more I did it, the more I loved it. But it was always an avocation and a passionate side piece to everything else I did, whether I was doing psychic readings or whatever. And I only in the last year and a half have gone into it full time again as a part of my work, because I find astrology, it's a celestial language. It's extraordinarily accurate. And I'm a very precise clairvoyant. But what I find with astrology is you can create a narrative thread, and you can really look at trends in a kind of a way that, so if I said to you something like, James, oh yeah, like in like 6 months, you're going to get an offer to write a book, and the guy's going to have blonde hair and his name's going to be Sam or something like it, which is the kind of thing I would deliver before, as well as stuff about people's past if I needed to talk about what had happened to them contextually to something that would happen. But the point is that they're kind of one-off Kresge statements, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have a broader story frame, a broader context for the meaning of it all. And so what if this happens? What does it mean? Well, if that happens when, like Jupiter is on your midheaven by transit, it's because it's going to be like this blowout of your whole career. And if, Jupiter's in your natal first house, it's going to mean it's a conjunct your ascendant or whatever, then it's going to mean it's your truest purpose. And, what I mean? There's ways that astrology allows people and me to construct a useful, clear, accurate narrative about your life. It gives it contextual meaning. And that's different than just doing psychic readings. Psychic readings are very exciting for people. And I used to love just telling the future right. I felt really good about, being right about someone's future. But I kind of quit because I had an existential crisis, which was what was the whole meaning of it all. So I stopped around 39, 41, I think. So from 33 to 41, I was full-time on that career. And then I just cold turkey quit and realized that I didn't feel that there was a greater purpose than entertainment or people's curiosity about their future, and that it didn't always serve people either to know everything about what would happen. Whereas astrology puts the future in the context of what your soul's mission is and what your soul's karma is and why you are even here on the planet.
Oh, I need one of those.
I know, I should do one for you.
Yeah,
you know what? I would love to. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Going back to the psychic readings and things like that, my friend Joanna she used to do the on Skype where she'd look at you and do the reading, and she's quit actually looking at somebody's. She has to do it blind now, because she found that she was, if the person winced or something, she was kind of, she was reacting to a visual, And then she was getting out of focus on it. So she won't look at the person, and she will not do the types of readings where, like, hey, could you tell me if I'm going to get the job or not? Because things can change.
Well, that's really ironic, because one of the astrologies that I'm studying right now, I'm apprenticing for a year in Hellenistic astrology, but also horary, which is very specifically, you come to me and say, should I take the job? Will I get the job? Will he ask me to marry him? It's an old ancient technique it's kind of like the yes/no technique, in a sense.
Yeah.
But you cast a chart for the querent's question at the time that the person asks it to you. Like when you sit down to do the session, the question is asked, then you make the chart for that question in that moment. And then that chart is its own answer to the question. It's a very specific, very ancient, like Hellenistic, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia technique to get a very clear yes and no answer. And so here's what I'm going to say about that. When I was doing a psychic readings in my 30s for 10 years or so, people would often ask me those sorts of questions, and I would offer them my insight, and it was not always welcome. They wanted the marriage to work, and I said, I just don't see it. But I was usually right. And so then I got in a conundrum, and I'm trying to still resolve this between fate and free will. Because if you look at the way the horary astrology works quite accurately, or if you look at the predictive techniques that are just like whatever they are, and they bear fruit, they turn out to be right, which is how I have clients. I have clients because I'm right. If I'm wrong, they don't come back. Then I start to wonder about me and everybody. We worry so much about our future. We get so caught up in trying to make it happen, make it so, manifest the secret. I'm really down on the secret. I don't like it. I have lots of reasons. And that's about full agency, full power, full free will, as if we're not somehow in concert with reality, that we're one instrument in the great symphony here. And it's very there's a word I want. It's very immature. It's almost like an ostrich with a head in the sand, that we could believe that we have full agency over our life. We have partial agency. We have creative co-agency, but we don't have full agency. And the more you do astrology, you're going to bump into this conundrum, free will versus fate. And the more you do psychic readings, I bumped into the same conundrum. I want to give you a little story about something, because I think stories are better than illustrators than theory. When I was a practicing psychic in my 30s, I had a client come to me. I'd never seen her. I usually did phone readings and recorded them for clients, but this time it sent them cassette tapes, dudes. Oh my God, it was so bad those days. You had to mail a cassette to somebody after, a reading. Anyway, so I used to do that. After the reading was over, I'd mail the cassette tape. But anyway, she came to my house. Very rare that I had clients in my home, but she lived in the town, so Annapolis, Maryland. So she came, sat down with me in my house, and I started the reading. Cold. I was a cold reader. I'd never want to know something about somebody. And so after I got into it, and I'm flowing with it, she's smiling and kind of nodding a bit. I try not to look, because I don't want confirmations. I try to stare off into the distance away from my client. But I get the sense that I'm hitting the mark, and I'm feeling really good about it. And all of a sudden, I say a few things that stop her. Like, she tells me to stop, and she's choked up and she's crying. And I'm talking fast like I normally do, and I get the material coming through quickly, so I'm having to backtrack a little to try to figure out what I had just said that's upset her. And she says it's the prediction I'm going to have a baby boy in a year, or within a year, or pretty soon. And I'm trying to figure out, why is that going to be so upsetting? Does she hate children? And then she's young. She's only like 32 or 3, and she says, I had my ovaries removed 6 months ago. She had ovarian cancer, and they caught it in time, but I will never bear children. And my husband and I are really disappointed, and she was really sad about that. He was a state trooper. She became a client of mine later, and she was, I think, an interior designer or something. So this is a story about fate and free will and reality, because what I did is I said, gosh, I could be wrong. I'm so sorry. And let me go back in psychically and I'll suss it out again and see what I get on this one. And I'm feeling really bad for her. But I go back in and I'm not going to massage the data. I'm not going to say, oh, maybe what it means is a birth of a project, blue could mean it's very young. I'm not doing that. I go back in psychically and I see the same damn thing. I see her literally holding this little boy in her arms with the dark hair and all this olive skin complexion. She's Italian. She looks like that. It looks like her child to me. He's newborn. He's all fresh as a newborn, and he's got the blue blanket. I know it's a boy, and it's imminent. I said, I can't tell you why I see this. It's happening. It's happening soon. I said, I still think it's a year out. And I said, I'm not going to change it. I don't know what it means. I said, maybe you're going to adopt. And she said, yes. Well, we looked into it, but it's like you got to get on a wait list, and we're looking at kids from China or Cambodia, yada yada. It's going to take a long time. Certainly not in the next year, and we're not likely to get a newborn. And so that's the end of that story. So a year later, she comes back to my house for a reading. And I still remember that I had remembered her because I felt so bad. Mm-hmm. And she came back and she walked in, and in her arms she had a bag with something in it. She said, before we start, I got to show you something. And she opens up the photo album. And in this photo album is her with this little beautiful boy in her arms, literally a shock of black hair, like her black hair, dark hair, and the olive tone skin. And she said, it's a miracle, but this is what happened. Literally within a few weeks of my reading, she got a call from her mom. Her mom and her mom's Catholic. She was raised Catholic, and her mom's best friend had a 14-year-old daughter who got knocked up. They're not going to do the abortion because Catholics don't do that, and they're going to have the baby and give it up for adoption. And the mother asked if my client would take the baby.
Oh, wow.
And so she was going to have a baby within a year. So the point of the free will and fate was nothing was going to stop this event from happening. And it wasn't going to be an adoption in 3 years. And it wasn't going to be an older child, from Cambodia who may have, suffered wounds and stuff. And the beauty of it was, she raised that child with the mother of the child as the auntie. So it was actually a lovely story. And she would come back every year and show me pictures of this little boy growing up. So, that was an unstoppable, fated moment. That was going to happen. Nothing was going to stop it, not even having no ovaries. Yeah. I almost like to think of it like the soul of that child was going to get through to her one way or the other.
Yeah, it was assigned and it's coming.
Yeah. And so then when it comes to astrology, which predicts those things that are assigned and they're coming, I think it's useful to know. I think it's helpful to see what is coming, but to understand why it's coming. And astrology gives you the why. It gives you the picture, the deep layer picture of the sort of a mandala. The astrology chart is like a mandala, but it has a story embedded in it. And you can tease out the story of why somebody is here using astrology. And sometimes it's more fun when a person is a little bit older, like in their 50s or 60s or 40s, because then the stuff behind them also makes more sense. When you do a chart for somebody in their teen years, which I've done, it's really hard for them to even think of their life in terms of the long haul, right? They just see the now. Yeah. So most of my clients they're quite accomplished and interesting people, but I tend to attract 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Well, it's interesting. You get the clients that come in for a reading. Let's see, they show up at a little shop and they want to have their oracle cards read. It's the majority of them are going to be women, and they're going to be between about 21 and 45. And then you get the astrology side of things, and it's people that are pretty much set in their ways. They've gone through a lot of in their life, and they're either coming up to retirement or they are in between or thinking about a career change or something like that. And it's not the entertainment factor as you will when it comes to a lot of the oracle card readings or even tarot readings that I've watched. It's where all the kids come in, a bunch of people come in because hey, let's today we're all going to we're going to have a psychic come over and read cards for us at our party kind of thing. Astrology can be like that, but it's I think for a regular client, it's really a guidance. And I interviewed an astrologer years ago from Los Angeles, and his clients were like heads of the production companies for film and heads of corporations. And it wasn't really just the personal reading or chart, it was the chart for the company for the next quarter.
Absolutely. Oh my God. That's such a good point, because astrology is a very reliable tool, which is probably shocking to some people, but is extraordinarily reliable for timing and timing trends. And I just literally listened to an astrologer on a 3-part series. Oh, this was a one-part. It was one long lecture that I listened to. She's lovely. And she is a finance astrologer. And there's another famous financial astrologer named Crawford. I think it's Richard Crawford, and they have massive followings in the business world, because they literally have predicted things like collapses of the stock market using timing trends that are very accurate in astrology. And so, yes, I mean, it's a tool, very practical tool. There's not a lot of leeway for you can't tell a client something. And I do have business clients, and I have lots of men, by the way, which you don't get just with psychic readings. You can't massage the data with astrology, or you're doing your client a disservice too. You can't pretend that, a harsh aspect with one of the malefics like Saturn or Mars, to a natal planet that's maybe natally positioned in one of the tougher houses, like one of the houses of more ill fortune. If that's happening in their life, you got to give it to them straight, but you also got to mention it in a way that you can see that there is and it's not how you handle it. I don't do psychological astrology. I do real, this is what's likely to happen. It's not like, oh, your inner child might, feel wounded by Mars. Mars is a severing force, when I had divorces happening, which is severing and cutting off, Mars does that. I was in intense Mars cycles with my two ex-husbands. And so it's literally going to cut something. And Mars is going to sever something in your life. But you have to see the big picture, that whatever is severed, the job that you get, let go from, the relationship that ends because, the person left you, or you decide to finally leave them. Those are good examples. Whatever gets severed, you're having a major Mars transit by solar progression or, solar arc or actual transit, is something that needs to leave. And that's why I like astrology, because not only does it tell you, get ready, something's going to come to an end, it tells you why and how to embrace a potential ending. And it won't always say exactly where something will end, but you can get pretty literal. I had a client the other day, and I looked at her chart before the session. I'm like, oh, divorce. The whole chart is set up for, she must be in the thick of a divorce. And of course, when we get on the session and I say, well, are you having any issues with your marriage? Because she said she had a husband. She said, yeah, we're in the thick of a divorce. And so you can really, truly use this astrology for business, for health, for making wise decisions about your love life, and for making decisions about your career and your passionate career, your purpose, that are based in very solid, really reliable oracleship.
Very cool. I'm going to start bugging you about, not bugging you, but I'm going to get into the reality shift and the Neptune concept coming up, or the Neptune effect coming up here. I just want to remind people that your websites are lunaticastrology.com, and also we've got theawakeneddreamer.com. And one is the Awakened Dreamer. That's kind of a blog one, isn't it? Or your writings.
Yeah, so The Awakened Dreamer is where I started writing about enlightenment in 2011 after I had an enlightenment episode, overnight enlightenment. And what happened from that was that because I love to write, I'm a reporter, I was trained as a reporter, a journalism graduate, and psychology, but reporting too. And so I tend to report things. So my Awakened Dreamer blog is subtitled Dispatches from Beyond the Dream. So I'd like to tell people what's happening, and I keep updating it, because enlightenment is is a beginning, not an ending, or an awakening is a beginning, not an end point. It continually evolves into new expressions. So that's the awakened dreamer. And the thing about go ahead.
Lunatic Astrology, that's the
Lunatic Astrology is the astrology site where you can book a reading or, check me out or whatever in the astrological realm. I wanted to say something about the awakened dreamer and Neptune, because you said the Neptune effect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the reason, I think you saw my YouTube post on Neptune. Yes. People think about enlightenment as some kind of like hit and miss thing, or they think about it as you got to train for it like a marathon. I'm going to meditate 4 hours every morning, and I'm going to get the Zen thing down, or I'm going to be so damn mindful, I'm the queen of mindfulness, and then one day I'll be enlightened. Okay, that's one approach, hard work. The second approach is, it's just going to hit me someday. When I'm ready, out of the blue, if I'm lucky and I deserve it, and actually it hit me out of the blue, but it wasn't really out of the blue. And that's what I learned about enlightenment by looking at it through the lens of astrology. In an astrological lens, you can look at two factors. What is the karmic imprint in the natal chart that could suggest that you have accrued some karmic merit, that maybe you've done some kind of work toward enlightenment in the past, and that would be looking at the part of fortune, the part of spirit. It would be looking at the natal 12th house. We're looking at where Neptune and Jupiter are in your natal chart. So there's ways to suss out somebody's sort of spiritual. What is the word, like dividends, that they might be ready to cash in this lifetime by looking at the natal chart. I don't think I've seen one person who's had a seriously real enlightenment who has a really belabored chart, okay? Like that looks like they're like here to get in the trenches of some karmic knots to be untied. They have certain aspect patterns too that go with the potential for enlightenment. So, aspect patterns are bigger ways that planets connect to each other, like kites or something, or mystic rectangles, or fingers of God, which I have, a yod. So there's ways to sort of look at a chart and say, is this a lifetime in which a person's likely to have an awakening, just based on the natal arrangement? And then the second thing is what are the transits going to be in this person's lifetime that could precipitate that? So by studying my own chart and some charts of other people who have gone through enlightenment experiences, I really identified Neptune, or awakenings, or mystical experiences that are beyond just like a good campfire story. Ones that completely change your character, change the way you see yourself in the world. Ones that are like complete disidentification with the old self into a new sense of what self is. So those are awakenings. And so the Neptune factor is really interesting because it is usually a transit of Neptune, which Neptune is a planet that goes around the zodiac or around that sun every 144 years, I think. I'm trying to remember, but it's roughly that. And so when Neptune is landing in proximity to one of your personal planets, the sun, the luminaries, the sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, to some extent, I will also include Mars. This is going to be, especially if it's in a conjunction, it's going to be rare. It could even never happen in your life that you're going to have a close contact, a close encounter with Neptune. And there's another technique as well called solar arc. Same idea. If you're going to have a close contact with Neptune, it's rare. And it is that close contact with Neptune that precipitates these awakenings. And so my first awakening in 2011 was precipitated by a transit of Neptune to, at this point, I can't remember. I'll have to go back and watch my own YouTube video. But the other one that I just had another reawakening. I call it the bolt of grace that happened in December of 2018. Not only was it during a very, very powerful transit of Neptune conjunct my natal Mars, which I'm still experiencing, but it had its first hit in December, but as well, which is a once in a lifetime and never to happen again and may never have happened. But as well, I was actually traveling to a place in Mexico called Troncones, Mexico, which is on a Neptune line in my relocation chart. It's Neptune on the MC, culminating. In English, that means I was traveling on a vortex of Neptunianness for me and staying there for 3 weeks, which was like I was saturated within Neptune's energy in that location, contextual to my natal chart. And the only other place on the planet that I could get that same kind of Neptune hit is right through the middle of India. And I've always sworn I'd never go to India. So Mexico is better. And so, yeah, so we can look at charts and we can see such things as spiritual attainment, likelihood for awakening. We can retrospectively look back and see why somebody had an awakening, which again is that whole free will and fate conundrum.
That's fascinating. It is kind of more of an interest to mine now as I've looked at astrology over maybe the last 10 or 15 years, kind of poked into it, and everything from, honestly, from being a kid reading your horoscope. That's your first little tip your toe into something that's astrology, and then move on. And I recall one of the local newspapers here, it was always bang on for the day. And the reason I would do it, because I'd read it the day after. I go, oh yeah, that was yesterday.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So that's how but there was other newspapers that weren't that great. And it was just one of the local newspapers. I don't know where the guy who wrote that was, or the guy or the girl wrote that was, but that's how I started finding that, okay, I'm going to pay attention a little bit more to this. Because yesterday was that.
There was a guy a few years ago that was really good. He wrote a book called Pronoia, and he used to have a column that was in lots of the syndicated papers, and he did the dailies and the weeklies. I think he did weeklies, and he used to hit the nail on the head. But what a lot of people don't realize, and this is where you get out of the sun sign simplicity, is that when you really resonate with a columnist and he's giving you dailies or weeklies on a sun sign, you may be resonating for reasons other than your natal sun sign. For instance, it could be your sun sign and your ascendant. Your ascendant could be the same as your sun sign. So your ascendant, your moon, and your sun are the three ways that you would possibly resonate with somebody giving a non-tailor-made, solar sign style astrology prediction. But it gets really refined and very granular when you start to look at the natal chart, and it's looking for what's called the master of the nativity, or the helmsman of the chart. And that's going to be the most influential part of your chart, the planet that has the most power. And the reason I want to bring that up is because a lot of people think they're identifying with their sun sign when they listen to astrology, but they actually may be identifying with it not because it's a sun sign, but because it just happens to be, that, your ruler of the most prominent planet in your chart is, let's say, the sun, and you're a Leo, but the sun is the, master of your nativity. So for you, my God, every time you hear a Leo report, it lands, man. It really lands. Or, you're an Aries and you think, oh my God, I also love these Aries reports. They're so me, but maybe not. Maybe it's because your first house and your ascendant are, in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, and therefore Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars rules Aries too. So there's so many ways that sun sign astrology is just so not useful when you're trying to make it one size fits all. And sometimes it gets disheartening for me because I love astrology and want to share it with the world, but I'm so far haven't gone out there and done sun sign astrology on my YouTube channel. Welcome Aries, month ahead. I haven't kind of gone there because I'm trying to figure out where to go with the integrity of the science of the astrology and also offer something of value.
Yeah. Could you, just for me and my listener who may not know, but what is a house?
Oh, yeah. There are 12 houses around the natal chart. The sun in the sky up there. I mean, like went into outer space, there's the sun, right? Okay, let me get that right. It is the zodiac. Let's go with the zodiac because it's the sun moving through the zodiac. So forget that. It's like literally the constellation of the stars have been divided into 12 pie slices, right? That represent the constellations as they are experienced by us on Earth as the Earth rotates. Okay, so the Earth is rotating. And then on the horizon, oh, look, it's whatever rising, it's Pisces rising. So therefore Pisces gets 30 degrees of the pie. And then after Pisces, the next sign, Aries, gets 30 degrees of the pie, and Taurus gets, these are constellations in the sky, but then they're rendered as a two-dimensional map, right? Like just a piece of paper with a circle and these pie slices, 12 houses, 12 pies. So it represents a cosmic reality, but it's two-dimensional and not spherical. And the thing with houses is they have delineations, right? So your first house is you, the native. It means this is who you are. It's the house of you. It's the I am house. The second house is the house of your money, and the third house, the house of your siblings, and the fourth house, the house of your home and family, and even real estate, and the fifth house, romance, etc. Sixth house, health and work, and seventh house, marriage. And so the usefulness of the houses is it divides your life up into slices of how you experience reality. And then therefore transits of planets through your natal houses, right, in real time, meaning that I say a transit, I mean like right now, as we speak, planets are moving through the heavens, and they're going to be positioned at a constellation and a degree, and it's going to be transferable to that two-dimensional map. Now that said, I have to say something for any astrologers listening, because I'll be spanked if I don't say it. Western astrology is not accurate in terms of astronomy. You would need to use sidereal astrology, which is what the Hindu astrology is. It's called Jyotish. And other traditions also use sidereal. Sidereal is literally where a planet is in the sky at any given moment. For whatever reason, the Western tradition is actually not taking into account the precession of the equinoxes, and so therefore it lags the real-time placement of the planets by roughly 23 degrees. So what that means is that it shouldn't work if we actually believe that precision, like astronomically, matters to the celestial language of astrology. But it works. And the reason it works, and it's very accurate, is because it's a divination art. It's a divinatory tool. It's a scrying mechanism. It's not meant to be like, let's plot a way to get our spaceship to, Venus when Venus is, here or there. It's not that. So I did want to qualify that, because yes, it is about the zodiac and the movement of the Earth rotating, and therefore how we see the zodiac relative to where we are. However, when I was born, April 4th, 1962, for anyone listening who cares to look at my chart, I'm not that shy anymore, 4:01 a.m. When I was born, Kirkland Lake, Ontario, go for it, people, any astrologers listening, it was not actually my rising sign in Western astrology of Aquarius. Aquarius was not rising on the eastern horizon when I was born. Okay, so Capricorn was. It was off by 20 degrees. But when I use the astrology as a divinatory tool and pretend that Aquarius was rising on the ascendant, and used my ascendant degree, right, as it arises from the Western tradition of astrology, I can map life turning points and changes that have happened retrospectively, right, and proactively. So it's a scrying tool. It works, even though it's not astronomically accurate. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so basically it's like flipping a card.
Yes, you can look at the astrological wheel, the horoscope, the planets, almost like a tarot spread.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I'm familiar with tarot spreads, but I can focus on I can throw a bunch of rocks on the ground and focus on them and get a reading. But somebody shows me something with a picture on it, and my brain's gone to the picture, and off I go. Hey, I gotta run this by you. I've got. You know what Patreon is?
Yes, and more astrologers that I really respect, including the fellow I'm apprenticing with right now in Hellenistic Astrology, Adam Ellenboss, plug, Adam, Nightlight Astrology, are using Patreon to support themselves and make a living.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing not to make a living with my podcast, but if people like the podcast and they go to the oraclesjamestyson.com and click on the Patreon link, for a $3 a month month donation, their name goes into a draw for a psychic reading, a past life regression, and a astrological chart.
Oh my God.
And if I can get up to 2,222 people by the end of the year, I'll be drawing names every month for a trip for 2 accommodations, airfare, car rental. So if you like UFOs, I'll send you down to the UFO conference, or I'll send you up to Sedona to watch them come and go from a portal. If you like ghosts, I'll send you to a haunted castle or Gettysburg, or down to Remington, Remington, the other rifle, Winchester Mansion. And if we max out, it used to be at 4,500, but I'm going to drop that down. But I think we max out, I'll bounce you around internationally. So if you like ghosts, you're over to Scotland. If you're in Scotland and like UFOs, I'll send you to LA for the Alien Con, or down to Australia for one of their Alien Cons. So that's the plan. I don't really use it because, well, I'm retired, and I'm actually did quite well with reselling my house. So I really don't need the money, but I like to travel. So I would go with them and like interview the people.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Yeah. So,
okay. So how many, like, how often do you do the draws for these things?
Well, as soon as I will do them every month for, I need 20 people to start off with. And then once I get my 20 people in at $3 a month, I'll start drawing once a month, and I'll have 3 draws. One's a psychic reading, one's a past life regression, and one's a astrological chart.
God, I'd donate one of my readings for one of your draws.
Oh, cool.
That would be. I'd love to do that. I can send my people and say, sign up for James's Patreon. You might win one of my readings.
Yeah, and if you don't win a reading, and you're in there long enough, and by the end of the year, if I get my 2,200 people, you may end up going on a trip. So.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So what would happen was, it's like if you're all about UFOs, let's say, and I draw your name, you're not going to go on a silly ghost thing. You're going to go on a UFO thing. It's a negotiated. It's like, no, these are the things. Which one would you like? Here, where's your bucket list? Show me what you want to do, and we'll make it happen.
That's a great gift. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have to do a chart on that to see if it'll work. Yeah. But hopefully that's going to go well. And like I say, I don't really need the money to come into this, but I do like to make a living on it, because I have a very good government pension and I don't have any bills. I just want to go out and do stuff with people and go to UFO Fest in Oregon and down to the Preston Castle in Northern California next month on my way to Alien Con.
That's the whole idea behind the Patreon. It's to give the content creators the funds they need to create the content, and you're creating fantastic content. And so, this funds your travels when you go to places to interview lots of your great guests. So, yeah, the whole premise of Patreon is amazing. I really like what they're doing.
Yeah, and doing those travels, I want to take people with me who are interested in that kind of thing. And honestly, they don't have to get stuck with me, honestly. And plus, if I'm going to send you to Scotland for a week, it's an open ticket, so hang out a little bit longer. While you're in Europe, stay there for a month, for goodness sakes.
Oh, my God.
And go somewhere not as rainy as Scotland while you're over there. We're talking to Ann Lothian. She is a very nice lady and a friend of mine. Her websites are Lunatic Astrology and The Awakened Dreamer, awakendreamer.com. Ann, we've kind of did we cover the Neptune effect?
Yeah, we really did. It's just a little bit of that whole fate and free will thing, and it's like, if you're going to wake up, you're going to wake up. Does Neptune cause an awakening? Of course not. Does any planetary body cause something to happen in your life? No. Those planetary bodies are reflections of a deeper mechanism, a deeper order. Just like the physicist says, David Bohm. He says the implicate order and the this is such an awkward word. Implicate and explicate order. And what he's saying is there's a hidden order beneath what we see. And we don't always know what it is. It's the same idea, with that whole Plato's allegory where the people are in the cave and they see the shadows on the wall. They think the shadows are reality. Then they realize it's not reality. Reality is, the fire casting shadows, that they're not seeing that it's a shadow effect. So I think that's the same thing with astrology. I want to make it clear to everybody that planets don't cause things to happen celestially. They are a mirror, like a narrative mirror, a story mirror of things that are happening, and the mechanism is unfathomable. I have no idea what causes things to happen. Right? I don't know what God's order is really all about, but we see the reflection of what will happen and what is happening through the stars. We don't get caused into happenings by them. They're not causal. They're correlative, but not causal. So I just want to be clear about that. So for anyone who doesn't do astrology or love it or know it, or is skeptical, if you think astrologers think planets cause things to happen, you're wrong. Okay, we don't think that at all. So Neptune. Okay, so no, but there's something else I want to talk about. Can I bring it up?
Shift?
Well, no, that too, but no. Okay. But we're still in astrology.
Yes, dear.
Oh my God! I'm coming to Vancouver in a couple of weeks. We got to get together and have a beer.
Okay, but only one or two, three.
Only one or two. Okay, three. Okay, so. Okay, so here's the deal. The other thing I like about astrology, besides what I just talked about, is when you're looking at political events in the world stage, you can look at the mythic layers of it, and you can see how what's playing out in front of our very eyes is often literally like a story right out of Mount Olympus and the gods of Mount Olympus. It's storied into the myth of what's happening, and that gives you a sense of what may happen when you put it into. I'm going to give you an example. When you try to plug a contemporary story into a mythic framework. So right now we have Donald Trump as President of the United States of America. She sighs deeply. Yeah. Both my kids are U.S. citizens too. I mean, it's very daunting that this is what's happening, but I'm going to just breathe. I'm Canadian for other listeners, so I may have a political skew toward the middle, like most Canadians. So what happens is that Donald Trump is literally going through this, trial and tribulation right now, as it looks like he's going to be, maybe, impeached, or they're going to begin impeachment in beginning of impeachment questions and stuff. And they're trying to subpoena a bunch of people. And everybody's saying no, but Donald Trump Jr. said yes. So literally, we've got nobody else showing up on the stage, but Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyers negotiated a deal for him to appear mid-June sometime, to be determined when. Can't wait to run that chart. In front of the whichever committee is interviewing him, the Judiciary Committee probably, and to sit there in front of them and be interviewed about his role in the Russian thing, with the meeting of the Russians in the hotel room, and to go back over some of the stuff that Robert Mueller found. And what I like about this story is I think I can see what's going to happen. I'm going to declare a prediction, and I'm going to tell you why. Donald Jr. is the Achilles heel to his father. He is going to be the thing that brings his father down. I believe I can see it in the chart in a very simple way. Donald Trump Jr. has his natal Jupiter. Okay, for everybody else, that means that the planet Jupiter in his horoscope, in his natal chart, is in the house 12th, the sixth house, the slice of the pie called the sixth house, opposite his father's ascendant. And his father's ascendant is conjunct Regulus. Now, Regulus means the king, okay? It's a very powerful fixed star that his father's first house ascendant, or whatever, is connected to. This Jupiter in his son's sixth house. Now, what does that mean? Because it just sounds like a bunch of words. It means the king, Regulus, right, is going to have an opposition from his son's Jupiter. And what's really cool about this is that if you look at the mythology of all of this, and I should have added something to this, and there's a Saturn involvement as well. I'm trying to remember where it was. I don't have the chart in front of me. Saturn is Kronos, and he was castrated his father, Uranus, in Greek mythology. And then then after he did that, Saturn was told that he would have his children destroy him. So every time he had a child, he swallowed his children. And so Jupiter, was the one of his children they got away from him. He didn't have a chance to devour him. So you got this horrible storyline of Saturn, castrating his own father to take power. And then you've got Saturn killing his own children while devouring them in his belly so that he could keep them from usurping his power one day and destroying him. So what happened is, just like Moses in the basket, Jupiter was scurried safely away from peril, and his father couldn't swallow him. So then he grew up to be the force that overthrew his father. Okay? So Jupiter, Zeus, overthrew his father. Donald Jr.'s overthrower of fathers, Zeus, Jupiter, is opposing his father's kingship, Regulus on the ascendant. And there's another aspect of Saturn they don't have handy, which tells the story of imminent downfall by virtue of usurping of the king dog, the one in charge, the president, by his son. You add to that the Regulus, a fixed star, which is just a star in the sky, but it's at the same degree as 29 degrees of Leo, the same degree of the ascendant of the president, is known for a great power, rising to great power, but with sudden downfall. Now, it doesn't seem like it's a sudden downfall because Donald's hanging in there by the skin of his teeth or whatever. But it seems to me that the downfall mechanism will be something that Donald Trump Jr. says that maybe we don't expect, that we don't know. And I would even hazard a guess that it's an unconscious passive-aggressive disclosure, because I don't think that his relationship with his dad, based on their co-joined natal charts called synastry, is all that good. I'm not going to go into all the reasons, but the point being, if he let a Freudian slip, if he disclosed something that was really damning and damaging to Donald Trump, it would be the archetype of what I see in that Jupiter opposite natal position, Jupiter opposite his dad's Regulus. Okay, so I'm anticipating a downfall here.
Okay.
And I think that it's literally like that thing that dominoes out of control. So it's like everything seems that Donald Trump is going to just stall till he gets reelected. That's his plan. Take things to court, fight every step of the way. But if his own son discloses something that is not expected and that is more damning than what we've heard before, I feel like what we end up with is the beginning of the domino of the downfall of Donald Trump. So we'll see what happens. I could be wrong. I could even change my prediction when I look at the charts closer. That was like glancing at the charts a week ago. When I saw that, though, I was like, oh.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Mid-June. That testimony will be heard by Donald Trump Jr.
It doesn't mean that Donnie J is going to be taken over, Donald Jr. It just means he makes a mistake and
well, it's so unlike Zeus, who rose to great power, of course, yes, by usurping his father and emancipating his sisters and brothers from his dad's belly. I know, right? That's like they all came out. Out came Hades, out came Neptune, out came Hestia. Anyway, but here's what I think about that. Zeus liberated his siblings, right, from his dad's devouring belly, and I don't think any of those siblings are doing great. Eric, his daughter, and his two daughters, Tiffany and Ivanka. I mean, their dad is a narcissistic tyrant, right? No, malignant narcissist. Really? Yeah. Oh, okay. And so they're all wounded as all hell, right? So they're devoured by Donald. They're in the belly of their narcissistic, tyrannical father, who's now showing signs of dementia. To add to that, and so basically, I think by disclosing the truth accidentally or passive aggressively or purposefully, for all I know, some kind of truth in those hearings, closed door hearings, but we'll hear the outcome of them eventually in the mid-June, that what will happen is that he will liberate his siblings, just as Zeus liberated his siblings. But no, I don't see, of course he's not going to rise to power. His natal chart's very ninth house. I think he's meant to be actually more spiritual than we see right now. I think we don't see the spiritual side of Donald Jr., Trump Jr. He may actually have a spiritual turnaround at some point in his life. So we'll see.
Right at the last minute, like most people.
Because the ninth house is a house of God. Sorry, I should have said house of religion, wisdom, God, all that good stuff.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So I made a prediction on air.
On
air, so
this is see, that's why it's worth $3 a month. You
$3 a month is nothing. Put your money in the hat, people.
It's like that's what I keep thinking. It's
a latte.
It's Ariana. It's an Ariana Grande latte with a twist there. It's whatever that means. That would be interesting, because I know years ago we picked like way before this Trump-Wellian age that we're in now, but we had a show talking about the shift coming up, and that was about 3.5 years ago. 4 years ago, before Trump was really, on the main stage politically, we were talking about somebody coming in and taking over. The governments are going to be taken over by people that were going to turn politics upside down and kind of cleave society down the middle in their countries, to have an us against them attitude, while getting ready in the event that something, we stop living with the earth, or we stop living off of the earth and get back to living on the earth or with the earth. Things are going to go sideways, and these politicians globally were going to get us ready for a cleansing of our own civil war-like if we don't
absolutely
together. So,
well, and that was a prediction one of your guests made. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what we talk. We would talk about it every couple of weekends. We had a show called one of the episodes called The Shift, and we had psychics coming in saying, "Yeah, this is what's happening. If we don't start living with the earth and stop living off of the earth is giving us a whole bunch of clues." And one of the big clues it gave us was what you saw happen in Puerto Rico. If in I think in 1859 there was a solar flare that knocked out all the electrical in North America, which at that time was the telegraph. Not a big deal. But if that hit again today, you'd have planes falling out of the sky, and
there's a lot of people in distress about the possibility of all the solar flare stuff. Corey Good. I don't really feel that's going to happen. I am psychic. I have had prophetic dreams all of my life, including the trade towers shaking and burning, and I was running down the stairs to escape one of the trade towers. Back in I had that dream within less than a year, within months of the fall of the trade towers, and so I have prophetic dreams. I actually thought it was symbolic of the stock market, right? I couldn't imagine the trade towers would fall. So basically, when it comes to this end of the world scenario, I think we're going to be picked apart by multiple layers of disequilibrium crises, and I'll share astrologically why, and if you want me to, not to be dire, because I think this is necessary, but I do feel I know at least two of those areas where we're going to see it. So where we're going to see the signs of the dismantling of the false constructs that we built our world on, which is based on separation consciousness. One is that Uranus went into Taurus, and it's going to be there for 7 years. It went into Taurus last May. It went back out in this fall. It went back into Taurus because it goes retrograde. The planet goes retrograde. It went back into Taurus in March, and now it's going to be there for 7 years, more or less. But what does it mean when a planet moves into like a new sign in the zodiac, right? What's it for? Well, at a personal level, it means something. Like my natal fourth house is Taurian, and I moved from Vancouver to Montreal. And it's very common when people have Uranian transit through their fourth house that they're going to move suddenly. And I moved without any warning. I was there and then I was gone. So literally, because fourth house is home. That's a microscopic personal narrative. But globally, we're all experiencing this ingress or this movement of this massive planet of power and change. A god of change, Uranus, stands for change, stands for the unexpected, creates things that destabilize and create chaos in order for change to happen, and does it often in a very, lightning bolt way. And so without us getting a heads up that it's going to happen. So, as Uranus went into Taurus, a lot of people who are astrologers thought crypto was going to come back, and it's Bitcoin's bouncing way back ever since the ingress of Uranus, because cryptocurrency is a digital currency, and it's Uranus rules all things internet and digital and technology, and currency is Taurus. Okay, so it's like digital currency. But the chaos part of it that we haven't quite seen emerge yet, and a lot of people aren't focusing on what I'm about to say. People are expecting Taurus to be indicative of agricultural changes and revolution in our food system and distribution, to perhaps, this is astrological, to perhaps revolutionize the way we grow our food, to revolutionize and change things to do with the climate change, keyword, yeah, and maybe technologies to cope with climate change in a different way. That's all very Uranian. But, you know, Uranus has been correlated to pestilence. And I have a feeling that there may be an onset of pestilence. And my eyes have been drawn to things that people aren't paying attention to, like the fact that Ebola is raging out of control in West Africa again. And because there's wars, nobody is getting a handle on it. And it's way more out of control than it was in 2014, by the way. Now, there is a vaccine for it. That's the good news. So they are vaccinating in the field and stuff. That was developed by a Canadian. But nonetheless, if Ebola goes rampantly out of control and the vaccine supply doesn't meet the demand, which it wouldn't, right, in West Africa, we're going to see that kind of pestilence coming out of nowhere. Like, people will be like, what do you mean Ebola? That was 2014. No, Ebola could like rage up and spring at us like the end of July, early August, and we're all going to be going, don't travel to Africa. Number two.
Great. Just so on that note, my daughter's going to West Africa.
Oh, okay. Well, it depends where.
Yeah,
it's a Congo. It's in the Congo. They've contained it.
Okay, I think it's the Congo.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that after.
Okay.
The other one is not to scare people, but there's things like this. There's benign funguses that have taken, a drug-resistant new hold on reality. There's one called, I'm going to mangle it, Ceoris maybe, A-O-R-I-S. Anyway, they can barely disinfect it out of the hospital room when they find it. But it's a little bit like that C. difficile bacteria, but it's, they can get in the gut of people in hospitals and cause all kinds of problems. And it's drug resistant. Or MRSA. But this is actually even a little bit more daunting. Okay, so it's a fungus, and it's drug resistant, and it can kill people. And it kills people right now who are frail, with compromised immune system, very old or very young. But there is no treatment for it. There is a drug resistant gonorrhea. There is no treatment for it. We're not looking at the things that are potentially simmering below the surface of our awareness. Another example that Uranus would do something with would be, this is really dire, but there's a nuclear containment facility in the Bikini Island area, in the atoll, Marshall Atoll area, that they dumped in. Yeah, the lake is leaking. I saw it today. They dumped a bunch of waste in there in the late 70s as a temporary fix with no liners. And all you need is one good tsunami, earthquake. All you need for it now is rising sea levels. It's already got cracks, and they've already detected leakage in the soil around it. And the government of this little island area has no means to take care of it, but they signed off all of their kind of lawsuit rights to get sovereignty from the U.S. So the U.S. has no responsibility legally to take care of their mess. So we're in no man's land with that. It's just sitting there. Now that we thought Fukushima was bad for polluting the ocean, this containment facility is massive. A massive amount of nuclear waste in it. And if that leaks into the oceans, into the Pacific Ocean. So these are the kinds of things I see Uranus potentially activating while it goes through Taurus, because Taurus is Earth. It's the Earth sign, right? It's a bull. So what is Earth? Viruses are Earth. Bacteria is Earth. An island where you have dirt and someone's dug a hole in it and stuck a bunch of plutonium, which is Earth. I mean, even plutonium is of the Earth. So these are the areas that concern me more than anything else. I don't think we need all of them, but I think we need one or two of them as a massive, massive wake-up call.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
I think this next 7 years is going to show us this idea of living with the earth and how we'll have to do that. And it's not negotiable anymore. that is now. This is the time. We come out of the 7 years of this transit of Uranus, and I expect the world to look very different. I don't expect the way we handle money to be the same.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, going back to the Puerto Rico example, when electricity was completely shut off, you don't have access to money. Everything's barter. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different system that has to. The system is erased and has to be rebuilt. Oh, my daughter's going to Senegal in March.
Okay.
I have a friend in the Congo right now. He's ex-Canadian Special Forces and ex-Mountie. He got asked to go and help protect the guerrillas from poachers. So he's out.
Well, they are vaccinating people in proximity who are healthcare workers and stuff, and certain family members to isolate families. But what I'm understanding from the situation is because of the conflict, they're not able to get things under control, and it is escalating out of control.
Yeah, he had to go through his battery shots before he went again. Okay. He's been bouncing all over Africa as a special forces guy, but he just wanted to go to see gorillas. So he's up on the mountains protecting the bands of gorillas from the poachers who cut their paws off.
Yeah, that's just so sad.
Yeah, and it would be really sad for a poacher to bump into my friend Kaylin because he could poke your eye out at 300 yards with a straw and cause you all sorts of grief. But let's hope he doesn't run into anybody. And
we brought everybody down to daunting forecasts for calamity and chaos. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Okay, so let's talk about the reality shift.
Okay, let's cheer ourselves up.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so just in case you don't want to stick around for the end of the world, you can reality shift out of here. That's the tag. That's the zinger. Reality shift out of chaos. Miss the Ebola plague. So basically, a few years ago, I think about 6 years ago, I started noticing a phenomenon in my life. Now, I didn't coin the term reality shift. Another woman did. She wrote a book on it, but she started observing it as well. And so then once you start noticing this reality shift phenomena that I'll describe, then I think that you begin to notice you've probably been reality shifting all of your life, just didn't notice it or didn't know how to contextualize it. So what happens is that sometimes when you have an injury, a highly charged emotional event, or a spiritual event, you travel far and wide, and you have a more numinous or pilgrimage-like mystical experience during those travels. You can return from the accident, the illness, the emotional charge, or whatever, all those ways I described it to you, and you'll notice things in your world are different. And you might dismiss the things that are different as being like your faulty memory, okay? So an example of this I'm going to use, because I used it before, but it is my favorite, is I have a friend who went to Peru with me, and she is an editor in Manhattan, and she lives in a brownstone in the Upper East Side, rent-controlled building. She's lived there forever, and so this is important, these details. And when she was in Peru, she spent a day up at Machu Picchu by herself. The rest of us weren't going up there, or she stayed longer, and she came back from her time on the Machu Picchu rune site, and she said she'd had this mystical experience and that she felt very changed afterwards. And so what happened is when she got, then I only heard her tell me the story a few months after our Peru trip. I was visiting Manhattan, and we had a martini in a really funky bar in Chelsea, and she told me what happened. So when she got back from her trip, this woman who's lived in New York City all of her life got out of her cab in front of her house and noticed there was a tree in front of her building on the side, but on the land that belongs to her brownstone building. And she thought to herself, Jesus, did they just plant that? And it's awfully big, and because there had never been a tree there. But she's like, kind of like, whatever, she's jet lagged, and she goes upstairs to her building, it's a walk up, I believe. And she's getting, or is an elevator. No, she thinks she has an elevator, but she's going upstairs, and she's walking down the hall to her unit. And her neighbor comes out of her unit with her dog, or with a dog, and they're crossing paths. And my girlfriend says to the neighbor, "Oh my God, you got a dog when I was away." And the neighbor says, "I've always had a dog. What are you talking about? You know my dog. This is my dog, So now she's got 2 anomalies, the tree and the dog. Okay, and then the third one was she keeps her keys in a bowl in her house. You know, what many of us do when you walk in the door. There's a key deposit place. Mm-hmm. And when she went to Peru, she didn't take all of her keys, just what she needed, the very basic, 1 or 2 keys to get in the building in her unit. But she was reattaching her keys to the main key set, that has everything, the key to your safe deposit box, the key to your, your bike lock and everything else. And as she was doing that, she noticed there was a key on her keychain that she didn't recognize. And she had no idea what that extra key was. No idea. And she tried it in different doors, like it didn't fit her house. She didn't know what it was. And a few months later, her sister came to visit, and she pulled the keychain out and said, "Hey, any chance you know what this key could be for? Because I don't have a clue." And her sister said, "Yeah, it's a key to the dad's cottage in the Catskills." And my friend said, "Yeah, but we sold that years ago, right?" And her girlfriend and her sister said, "No, of course we didn't sell it. What are you talking about?" Now, this is catastrophic change, right? This is huge. And, this is an editor. She's very stable. I mean, editors aren't stable necessarily, but she's a very, in her groove, does the same things, same routines, smart woman. And this, we started joking about it. We were going to make a screenplay called Stephanie's World based on her storyline. And then I started looking at my own life. I reflected back on times when something like that had happened to me. And I began to share this with my friends. And as I now had this context for understanding weird changes like this, I began to see how many times it happened to me. And sometimes it was dramatic and sometimes it was subtle. One time I came back from Scotland and I was trying to find a radio station that I always listened to on my dial, FM dial. I'm never one of those people who programs my radio station, but it was a radio station in Vancouver called Espace Musique, and it was French-Canadian music. And I couldn't find it. It wasn't there. I was looking where I knew where it was, right? Because don't forget, I never preset it. So I'm the kind of person who pushes till I get to the right location of the radio station. And it wasn't there. So I don't know. Maybe I thought it was at 96.2 or something. And I had to call my friend who loves that station. And I said, "Sean, I'm just back from Scotland. I'm in my car trying to listen to French radio. Where's our station?" And he says, "Where it's always been." And he gave me the call number, the station's FM dial. And I'm like, holy man, yeah, it is there, but that's not where it ever was for me. Ever. No, I don't have dementia.
Not yet. No. Give you a couple of weeks.
Give me a couple of weeks. So if you ever have the experience then of that kind of thing. So I had this reality shift recently where, oh my God, I have so many stories of reality shifts. They're just mind-blowing. But never try to reality shift yourself. Buyer beware, man. Caveat emptor. I tried to make myself have a reality shift by doing a meditation to invoke one in a float tank. And at the end of my meditation in this flotation tank in Vancouver, I wanted to shift to a reality where I didn't have seasonal allergies. I actually heard a voice at the end of the float say, "You've got your shift, but it's going to happen on 16th Avenue. And then 2 hours later, after did this an hour later. No, it was after the float. Yeah, I left the float and I went down 16th Avenue to stop at Choice's little grocery store and get some groceries. And I parked my car. I was going to park my car. I stopped my car and I turned to parallel park. And some idiot, I hadn't even moved yet. I hadn't begun moving, thought he could race by me and he sheared my mirror off my car. And I had my body turned to parallel park, so I was looking behind me, not at the side of my car. And I hadn't moved, so it was his fault, not mine. He had to pay for it. Like I literally was stationary and he sheared my mirror off. But all I could hear was this catastrophic clang, like metal grinding, glass shattering. It's so loud when a mirror is completely sheared from your car. And when this happened, my whole body had the biggest adrenaline rush because I didn't know what had happened, right? I had no idea. It was just a huge adrenaline hit. Now I was safe. Nobody was injured. All was well. But it was that massive jolt of adrenaline from the shearing of the thing, the sound and the jolt of that created the reality shift. Yes, I didn't have seasonal allergies after that. Hallelujah. I also had a pain in the ass of having to contest the guy and who hit who and file and go through the insurance claim, So it was a reality shift with a weird cost. So yeah.
Well, here's my outside view at that. You had asked for the reality shift. You had asked for your allergies to be gone. Mm-hmm. It was caused, the universe sent you this event to cause it. Damn it, woman, you should have paid. Yes, it was his fault.
You're right.
Yeah, of course, it was his fault in the great scheme of things. But you're the one who caused it.
Oh my God, you're
asking for it.
Right. Oh my God, you're absolutely right. Oh my God, because finally he said, let's split it 50-50, and I pushed for no. I took pictures, I sent them to the insurance companies, and they said no, it was his fault. But you're right, probably got a karmic dent from that one.
Just get a big hug and said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it."
Oh yeah, I know. You're absolutely right. I didn't really put the pieces together till after that it was a reality shift jolt that I had conjured out of nowhere. Yeah, I know. And who does that? Like there was no room to go by me. There was like a car and a half width. I mean, it was nuts.
And he's probably wondering why he did it too, because he's never done that before, and he'll never do it again.
Exactly. It was so weird.
Yeah, I wonder what he got out of it, though.
Well, that's true. You know what?
First gave to him.
I think maybe he was being careless. I mean, maybe in a way he had kids in his car. You know, I mean, he had kids in his car. He was doing a careless thing. It was lucky that I hadn't opened my door, stepped out, and he had killed me. You know, in other words, there's so many ways that it could have been worse for him. So maybe he reflected on his driving habits after that.
Maybe the kids have learned something. Maybe it was a lesson for everybody who was in the car and a few other people who were across the street watching.
Yeah, who knows?
Ripple
Exactly. The ripple effect.
Ann Lothian, you are a marvelous human being. I wouldn't listen to what everyone says about you. Lunatic Astrology, almost said astrology. Lunatic Astrology is her is one of her woo-woo websites, Lunatic Astrology, and awakenedreamer.com. Go there, it'll actually look at her writings and it'll link up with some of her YouTube, some of them, your YouTube little chats that you give, the fireside chats on YouTube. And it's been a real pleasure having you. And I hear
it has been.
Alice Cooper in the background sneaking up on us, followed by Mounties. So that means I have to let you go, which is awkward.
It was so much fun. Thank you. And when I'm in Vancouver, let's have that beer together, okay? So I'll give you my dates.
Okay. You do that.
All right, James.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Night, and I live in the absence of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing as they go, what are those voices? Look up for the mountains. Somebody better hide through the hail, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail.